Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Muhyiddin Abdulaziz, and Director of IT at the University of Arizona College of Law. What we're going to discuss today is XML and how it can be used in the School of Law environment. And as an example of that is law review and journal articles, how we can mark them up and why we want to do that in the first place. I became interested in XML about 2.5–3 years ago. I started working with a group called Legal XML. I don't know whether any of you heard about this group. It's a national group that is trying to develop standards for XML for documents. Legal documents, that they are court documents, filings, or contracts, or transcripts, and other things like citations and the different aspects of the legal work that takes place. My work in general was focused in one group, which is called the court filing group. So far we have developed two standards. One of them is called the court filing 1.1 standard. And that standard defined the data or the information that is supposed to be in what we call the legal envelope, in which a legal document is stuffed in, okay, and sent to the court. And the legal envelope has information like about the case and about the filer, and but not about the document itself. The document itself is assumed to be what we call a block or a binder. And a block says, it's something that can be Word Perfect or PDF or whatever it is. Okay. Now, the other standard that was submitted 2 days ago, on Thursday, and became a proposed standard, okay, means that there are different stages in which a standard goes through. And now a proposed standard, that means it will be published, it will go for review and commentary from different people until it becomes a recommended standard, and then people start using it. And that's concerned about the document itself, okay, the pleadings, the internally generated court documents like orders, opinions, all of these things. And I'm the co-author with two other guys of the standard. The other two, one is, both of them are practicing attorneys. His name is Raleigh Chambers from North Carolina, and the other is John Messing from Tucson, Arizona. My work with this court document standard made me think about the documents that we use in lawsuits. And some of these documents, like law review and journals, are part of the legal literature. So I thought maybe it would be interesting. And also I looked at other documents that is in this conference. I went to 2 or 3 sessions that hinted or said that they're using XML here and XML there. And probably you're hear it everywhere. And some of you see it, sometimes you get an email message that something happened to it, and you see in it XML, MS, or all of this stuff. Okay. So XML is being used. Now, why is X? And even a lot of people are saying that XML is the future. And, every other year we hear something that is going to be the future. But why is XML important or at least interesting? Several things. Most of you are familiar with HTML. A few years ago, HTML was also something strange to us. That is, we were meeting here. I only recognized Tom that, we're here 15 years ago or so. And HTML was, it's fabulous. It's new. It's going to be the thing of the future, and it did. Okay, it became a thing. HTML is limited in two things. One is that it has a limited set of tags. You can't add to it. Okay. There is, head/head, title/title, and h1/h1, and so on and so forth. And it is mainly concerned with the presentation of the document, how the document looks. XML, on the other hand, is a meta language, that it doesn't have a predefined set of tags. You define your own tags to describe the content of what you want to, of your document, regardless of what it is. And it's also so flexible in that, it doesn't, once you have an XML document, you can use many different style sheets if you want to display it in different ways. Okay. You can use transformation to convert that document into other formats, either RTF and come in PDF or whatever it is. Right? The most important thing about XML, though, is that it is platform independent. That is transient. Right? And when we look at it, we will see it's just text. Okay? And, it is you use in the browser. You don't really need other tools to make use of that document. Let's have a look at some of these documents. This is a law review article published in Arizona. This is how the XML, this is an XML document, but the way it looks just looks like another document. I put the paragraph numbers there just so that we know what we're talking about. Now, this is the document as I got it from our law review people, the way they published it in Microsoft Word. The same kind of content, the content is the same. Now, if we look at this document, this is the same document in the background, that is without the style sheet that made it look like a real document. This is how the document is encoded. Now, to see what we saw, that is this document here. This document here, there are three documents actually that we use to get to this outcome. But we don't always have to have three documents. But so that you know what we're talking about, if we look at view and we go to source of this document, you will see here on top, okay, this is the XML declaration that should be there at the beginning of any XML document. Right? The second line here says doc type, okay, legal system and law review 1.0.etd. Now, what is a DTD? A DTD or a schema is another XML document in which one defines the rules on the structure for that document. Right? And we'll go in detail. The focus of this is to go over this DTD and why it is important. And the next slide here that says XML style sheet type equals href is the style 8.xl. Okay? And that is the style sheet. Okay? That is used together with that XML document, okay, to display the document so that we can read it normally. The style sheet here that I'm using is called XSL. Probably you heard about cascading style sheet. These are XML style sheets. And this particular type of XML style sheet is called a transformation style sheet, in that it transforms the XML document into something else. Okay? Now, for the purpose for what we see here, the transformation that I used is I wanted to display that XML document, the contents of that XML document, using HTML. So we're back to HTML for displaying that. So this document here, okay, is the XML, okay, and you see all of these tags. These are different tags, okay, that HTML. And you see this document here is the XML, is the HTML representation of that document. Okay. And if we look here, this is a tool I'm using. It's called XML Writer. Okay. And this is the first style sheet that I am using. And as you can see here, okay, I am transferring that document into HTML. Okay. And that is normal. We're not going to go into the details of it. Okay. But as you can see, a lot of this here is conversion into HTML. Now, this is the DTD, or the document type definition. And
do we have a bigger font on?
Yeah, we'll have another one. They are just showing it to you into text, okay, but then we'll go into more details of the LDT. But as you can see here, this is another, this document also begins with the XML declaration here. And then here it describes the different parts of your document. Okay? Now, when I say your document here, this is a DTD that you can use to describe any law review document. Okay? Now, this is a draft DTD, a draft DTD. Okay? And I'm looking for collaborators and authors to continue this work of this and other. So if you're interested, we can talk afterwards. But here is where we're going to now we're just going to talk about the DTD itself, the different parts of the engine. Any XML element, any XML document should have one tag that is defined as the root tag, okay, or the root element. Okay. That is, everything needs to be contained within that document, within that tag. The root for this proposed DTD is legal. And why is legal? Because the group that I talked about, Legal XML, we agreed that all legal related documents, okay, will have this as the root element. Okay? So we only see this legal, okay, at the bottom. See here, this is the actual document legal, and if you go, we go to the bottom of it. Okay, this is the law review article that we're talking about. Okay, and the document ends with that tag. Now within that, since we are already here, okay, this document, okay, is also has the law review and the version of this, which is law review here, version 1.0. Okay. We go back to our so this is the graphic that illustrates. Okay. Now, if we look at the XML coding here, okay, an element is how we declare that this structure. Okay. What we're saying here is that we have the element legal, okay, in this document, and within it there is law review. Okay. Now, because law review here doesn't have any other markers with it, okay, it means something in XML, okay, in that DTD. It means that this document can have only one document. That we can't have two law review articles or one law review and one journal article. Only one document, okay? And it has to have one, otherwise it will be illegal, okay? According to this DTD. So our main element here is called law review, okay? But we can choose another name, okay, to satisfy with that, to say also that journal articles also can be used for this purpose. Now, if we look at the law review element, it has two parts, okay? Which means that is any document must have two parts. One is called document metadata, okay? And one is called document body. Okay? And the document metadata is information about the document, okay? And that is who the author is, who the publisher is, who the, and so on and so forth. And the document body is the actual content of that document. So here you see our main structure here expanded a little bit. So we have from legal to law review and to add document metadata and the document body and the version, okay, of that document. Any questions so far? Okay. Now, we're going to talk about the two main parts, the document metadata and then the document body. Now, in the document metadata, we're saying here that the document metadata has two parts, okay? Or one main part called document identification. Okay? And document identification here, okay? You look at it, we have document metadata, and between parentheses we have one part called document identification. It doesn't have any markers in it, which means what? It means that is any document, okay, must have this part, okay, once and only once, okay, and it must have it. Okay. Now, in addition to that document identification, it will have a date time created and has a question mark on it. Now we can argue whether we need that a question mark or not, okay? But as I said, this is a draft and just for us to discuss, okay? Which means it is optional. Okay? Anything that has a question mark, okay, is optional. The document status, document type, creator, reference, and format. Okay? Now, creator, okay, we're just aware that we use it is different from the author of the article, okay? Like, I am the creator of this XML document because I did the markup for it, but the author is somebody else. Now, if we look at document identification, it is also has child elements there. It has parts to it. Okay? And this is what is to identify that document. This is the information we're going to use to identify that document. So we have publisher, publication, right? And for example, in this document that we have, which is called code fixing, okay, from the Arizona Law Review. The publisher is the University of Arizona. The publication is the Arizona Law Review. The volume number 43, issue number 1, the year 2001, the author, okay, now, all of these, and the document title, which is the actual title of the document, all of these are to appear only once in the documentation, except for the author, it has a plus on it, okay? Which means that is there may be more than one author for the document, right? Or it can be one or more.
I guess I'm going to ask the first of what will probably be a series of awkward questions about the extent to which you mean this simply to be descriptive and the extent to which you want it to be prescriptive. In other words, how much actual document identification information you're going to require people to put there, and to what extent you're simply going to describe what they did. For example, I'm wondering if I were putting author elements in there, I would have some elements for first, last, and middle names with the idea of doing some fairly definitive kind of authority control from it, bibliographically, or I might decide that I wanted the document to have a permanent arbitrary identifier corresponding to, URI. Which way are you going?
Well, as I said, this is a first draft, but author is. Let me go to another tool here that will help me jump to some things that some of the questions. This is called Turbo XML or the XML Authority. It's a very nice tool. This is the one that Kevin was very nice. But if we look at author here, okay, author uses another element, okay, which is person, okay, and person can be anything, okay. So we're saying here, when you're using an author, you must use a person, okay. Now, if we look at and to identify the author, we're using person, institution, and that is just the note. I didn't know the note that they usually put, at the beginning with a star, and they put their note about themselves or about the document and how it was created. Now, this is what I thought should be in an author. We may add some other stuff. But if we further look at person, okay, now person, I just put full name and title, but we can also further break that down, okay, if it is necessary, to first name, middle initial, and last name. Okay? But yes, this is, we can add. One thing that is nice about this is that it is flexible enough in that you can add to the structure. Okay, let me go back to.
Because what I would like to be able to do, Mo, is know that the Bill Boyd who wrote this article here is the same Bill Boyd that wrote the article that was published at Harvard using the same ETE.
That is
enough information there to be able to do.
Well, that is the greatest value in using XML. This it will bring us to where we have one structure and one body of knowledge, and when Bill Boyd moves from Arizona to Minnesota, we really don't have to do anything about either his web pages or his publication or these. If these are all, if we all agree that we're going to do these things to identify certain things. And that's why the XML work is really important and needed. So this is the document identification. As I said, this is proposed. I don't have much knowledge of law review articles. And as I was talking to Tom, and I even tried to talk to people to find out that they have. I found nobody, who tried to look at, to look at the structure of law review articles or journal articles. Everybody wanted to talk to you about style and how they want their documents to look or things like that. But really there is no analysis of the content or, and how that is to be structured. And so it's all something that I took and marked up paragraphs and, so this is, any input here is very much appreciated. Now we go, so this concludes the document metadata. So far we have not touched about the content of, or the text, okay, that makes up the document. Now, the document body looked at several articles, and it's all a bunch of text, structured in different ways. Okay. That is, some you have the paragraph is the main unit, and some paragraphs are grouped together, okay, into subgroups, and some groups are grouped together into more. So, in general, in this model that I have, we have the paragraph, and we can also have subparagraphs, and we have this model you can define 3 levels of subgroups, subparagraphs groups. They go on subgroup 1, subgroup 2, subgroup 3. And the subgroups can also be grouped together into groups. So the other than the body, okay, the bigger structure is what we call the paragraph group, and then paragraph subgroup, and then paragraph, and then paragraph or subparagraph. This is the basic structure of the document body. And the document body look at here, we can have in a document body, we can have a paragraph group, okay, or we can have a paragraph with an optional title, with the paragraph as title. Sometimes you find that is paragraphs stand alone outside of a group, and sometimes they are grouped together. So what this basically says, okay, that is the document body will have a paragraph group, okay, or, and this bar here means or, something called the paragraph model. And the paragraph model is we will look at it here, that is, it's a model for what a paragraph is like. And we'll look at it again. And then the paragraph group, okay, has a paragraph group title, which is optional, okay, and it can have a paragraph subgroup 1, okay. And when we look back down further, we will see paragraph subgroup 1 will have a paragraph or and subgroup 2. And subgroup 2 will have subgroup 3. And that's how we can, that's the 3 structure of any article or any document. Yeah, the paragraph model here, I'm not going to spend much time on it because it's a little more technical here than probably is needed here. There are different ways to define, to describe structure in a DTD. Okay. One of them is that you identify a model, and you use what is called an entity to do that. Okay? And here, if you look at this content attributes, okay, in many of the elements that we use, this is just a way of programming. In many of the elements that we describe, we use what is called attribute, okay, attributes. And the attribute is values, okay, that are attached to that element. Okay? Like when we say paragraph, title equals, this is my best paragraph ever. Okay? So title is an attribute that is used for this paragraph. Now, since we use things like label and type and subject often with paragraph, we use label with subparagraph. We use the same thing with paragraph groups and paragraph. So instead of defining label, we say these set of attributes, okay, we put them there, okay, so that different elements can use them, okay. Instead of defining them every time you want to use them, you define them once, and that's just for good programming. Now, the paragraph content here is another entity. In that is, now paragraphs usually, or any unit in a document, contains text that is not structured. And also this may contain other things that we want to pay special attention to. Okay? And what I saw is that a paragraph can contain a simple cite. Okay? And we didn't want to use citation here, okay? Because there is another group, Legal XML, that's working on a citation model. And instead of recreating the wheel, we're waiting for them to develop that, and then we put that. But meanwhile, we use something that is simple cite to identify that this is a citation. And it may have a keyword that for one reason or another the author wants to put there. A literal, a quotation, a footnote is a lot used. Okay? And it may contain a list, an annotation, a link to a URL. It may contain an image, a graphic, okay? And other things like person or a table or whatever it is. These are just suggested elements that may be contained in a document. So for example, if we look at this code fixing, and I chose this because it has different things like a table. Okay. It has some graphs here. It's another table. It has different tables. It has some images like this one. Now these are coded into the document. Look at this. This is the actual XML document. So, for example, this is how a table is defined.
You've got an element there, a footnote.
That's right.
Okay. Within that element, is there a required part to have a footnote number or some identifying character?
That's right. Yeah.
The footnote, so there's footnote and within that footnote number.
Right. The footnote. We go to footnote here. This is the structure for a footnote. A footnote has what I call the attributes content that is available with other things, like an ID and a label. A label can be anything like 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. Okay. A type, a subject, and a title, and all of these are optional. And then you have a footnote number, right? And then you have a footnote body. Right? And the footnote body will contain, just like the paragraph, it may contain other content, okay? Like the same stuff that you can have in a regular paragraph. Okay? Okay, where are we? Right, so here is the paragraph structure that we have identified so far. Right? If we look, now a paragraph group is just groups different. A number of subgroups or just a number of paragraphs. Okay? That is, it doesn't have to have a subgroup. It can have one or more of them. And a paragraph group has a title. Okay? Now, if we look at the actual document here, for example, we will see here different, I think this is a subgroup, okay, that has this title, okay, within, so there should be, this is another subgroup here, ABC, but this is the group that contains the structure of the different subgroups is the same. That is, you can have a paragraph, okay, after at least one paragraph, or another level of group. So subgroup 3 doesn't have it because it's the last one. Now, how many levels can we have to satisfy the different, I don't know, but with the 3 levels, since you can go really far, otherwise you lose your. I tried to not do that. That is to instead of saying subgroup 1 and subgroup 2 and subgroup 3, I started with saying we're going to have a subgroup and then a level as an identifier of that subgroup. The programming of it was so much difficult, especially when you're going to do style sheets and stuff like that. But it is something that is worth investigating. That way we don't have that limitation, although we can easily add to the DDT subgroup 5 and 4 and 5, and we can repeat that, okay? Because it's really the same model, just repeated. So there's not much overhead. Okay? But I thought the idea of having an infinite number of subgroupings with a definition for level, okay, is good, but it's time consuming to see how that is going to be. But for now, this should satisfy what we're trying to do. The table in the court document, we don't have a table, but I thought, and the list that we have is, although the list element can be used to do tables, right? But yes, it can be used to do tables, I'll show you from. But it is much easier to define a table. Okay. And in a table, we have a title, okay, and a number of columns, okay, and which is also optional, especially when you want to transform to HTML. You really don't need to know the number of columns because if you know HTML, it just adds that column as you define it. And the table is made up of one or more rows. Okay, so you have the element table row, which has a plus in it, which means you must have one, but you can have more. And within each row, there is a cell. And now the content of that can be anything you want. So if we look at this, okay. So here, this is the definition of a table here in the document. So here, this is where we start the definition of it in the XML document. Table 1, table title equals, this is the title of the document, and then we just define the rows that make up that table. So we have the first one, okay, we say that is the type of this cell is a heading, okay, so that it will just, if you want to put it in boldface or whatever you want to do, okay, that it defines that what falls under it, okay. This is a heading for the rest of these cells, okay, and so on and so forth. So it's really very easy to define a table, okay. You can put as many columns in it, and you can have as many rows as you want, okay. And it's simple enough that it can be programmed, in any authoring tool that you want. All right. The list element is the same thing. Right? You define the list and what makes it up, okay, which is the list item. And the list of time that the list item can have these attributes and can contain any one of these things. Now, really in the XML document, you just follow these rules to define to put in your content. Now, how this gets displayed, okay, depends on the style sheet. Okay. But if you have a good structure, okay, that helps the style sheet a great deal. Okay. Because if you have a too complex a structure, or worse than complex structure is a not well defined, not clear structure. Okay? That makes it difficult for a style sheet to work with, for example. A link, we're using the X-Link for links and also for images. Okay? And I chose for image, we call it an empty element, okay? Which means if you want to put an image in your document, you don't have everything is included within that tag, okay? That is, you put the title and what is here called X-Link href. It means the name of the file that you're going to display or to include in your document. If you know HTML, to display an image, you have image source equals blah, blah, blah. Okay? This is the href for the source equals. So that's where you put the name of your image. Okay, that's basically, most of the other elements are what we call PC data, okay, which means they're just text. You can put whatever you want in it, okay? Like full name, this is the image, okay, institution is just text, issue number, keyword, label, all of these things. But in general, this is what I thought that is, the note is very much like the footnote, okay? Except that I thought it is special because it's not part of the document, but part, it's not metadata either, but it fits there, but it has the same structure as a footnote. That's it. So as I said, this is a draft. I'm hoping that we'll have, with Kali, we'll start a group that is interested in developing this further and other types of documents that we may use. So please get in touch with me. No, we still have 10 minutes. If I really showed up, we'll give you back.
I want to answer Tom's awkward questions. From the point of view of somebody not so interested in the technical aspect of XML, Tom said, are you interested in prescribing or describing? Is this thing you're working on intended to prescribe how law review articles ought to be constructed? And if so, is that so that you can enhance communication among publishers of law review articles? Is that the idea?
For it to have value, it has to have that, it has to prescribe something so that, now what I'm doing is just trying to describe things so that we can reach a prescription together. I can't prescribe it myself. But this is just a first attempt. Okay? But eventually, the value of X, that is, the value is going to come when we have together developed a prescription for these documents and other types of documents. And we have a standard that we register, and that becomes known. That's when people like Microsoft or WebPerfect or whatever, okay, they're waiting. That is, they're working with us in the legal XML because it is in their interest that these things develop, okay, so that they can use them to provide tools for authoring that people will use.
And I mean, ultimately, whether you do these things with some kind of application, and it's always a trade-off between what you're going to require authors to do in the way that they find the part of the phrase express their style, and what it is that you're trying to do with it. Minimally, you want to use something like this to enable easy construction faculty bibliographies, let's say. So you want to ensure that there's a minimal amount of document metadata there that somebody can look at to do that. Another thing that one can imagine as an application for something like this is being able to transform the actual construction of your citations from, let's say, law review standard format to AP style, right, or MLA or what have you, just for authors who are doing multiple submissions. But in order to accomplish any of that stuff, to some degree, you have to tell authors what to do, and it's been my experience that law professors are not the easiest people to tell to do things. The question is where you want to strike a balance in the middle.
Well, that hasn't been my experience, Tom. Being one who's always willing to exceed the directives. Is it, at a more kind of a insidious level, could you imagine using this to be able, you said, could I be sure that Bill Boyd is Bill Boyd, the same Bill Boyd? Could you imagine?
Oh, jeez, there's a step. Okay. And for the camera, too. Thank you.
You all right? Could you imagine being able to use a tool like this to be able to ascertain the extent to which an author is using the same kind of content over and over again in a different way? One of the things we find in academics is somebody gets a good idea and then uses it 30 different ways.
You can do that with simple text.
Well, except that the text only gives you like a keyword or something. I'm just wondering about whether you can actually capture the substance of the proposition. Not that anyone would want to do that.
Maybe the author might want to take subgroup 3, insert in paragraph in article number 8.
Well, that's a more charitable, more positive.
Why don't I say I'm a clerk at a court writing judicial opinions, and we cut and pasting the boilerplate for summary judgment instead we're coding in XML, and we've got this XML for summary judgment.
That's right. There will be templates for all of these products.
In my experience is that if you make the template available, then people have an option whether to use it or not. In other words, it does make it possible to change the way the citations are done to conform to different formats. And that would be useful for people who are having multiple submissions or going in different directions. And so that's my sense of having the template available. If you don't have the template available, certainly people can't use it. I mean, that's for sure. So having the template available is one beyond the helpful thing.
That's right. That is not only the template, but also the tools. That is, people, from my experience, people want Word or Word Perfect to do it. That is, I just to show what we mean by this, I put a simple program and showed it to some judges and lawyers and stuff like that. That creates a document, And said, but they don't want to see tags. They don't want to see all of these things. They just want to type and they say, and that is they want to focus on the content and not on, so they need that tool that still allows them to produce what they want to produce without, have that overhead over it. And that should be in the background.
But isn't it the case that at least Microsoft, I don't know about Corel, but isn't it the case that Microsoft is going to integrate different PTBs in order to be able to
They
say...
do. Actually,
Corel's doing it.
yes, where Perfect already has that. It's a little clumsy. Okay. But Web Perfect does that, and it shows just like you put reveal codes in Web Perfect, and you show the documents. You can tell Web Perfect that is, I want to use this DTD, and let's have a document. Okay, but it's really very clumsy, and it's but it's a beginning, and once I think the most important, or that's what we hear from vendors, is that from the industry, they want those standards developed, and that is so that they know that there are people who are going to buy the products that they're going to develop. But so once they have it, they all have their own. Okay, and that's the real part. Microsoft goes and develops their own and this on, and the idea of XML is to create those standards so that they can do that. They don't need to do that. They don't have to do that. Everybody benefits. They benefit, and the people who use it benefit.
The thing that I think is you've got a tiger by the tail here in the sense that practically anything you can think of in the way of structured information can find its way into a law department. Right? I mean, I'm imagining reading through some article and finding a transcript of a court proceeding in French. And you want that structured appropriately for what it is. Obviously, to try to do the master DTD that's where you comprehend that, and epigraphs, and hanging quotes, and this and that, and all of the stuff that people do is really going to be quite a task. The good news, I think, is that the TEI people have largely done that already with all sorts of scholarly and coding stuff, and it might be worth taking a look at that. TEI, Technical Coding Division. Basically what they did is sit right back and I said, why don't you guys decide how to code everything? And they got the results you'd expect. But it does have the virtue of being simply comprehensive and skilled.
Yes.
A way totally novice feedback. It seems to me that there might be a few other categories. At least when I'm looking at articles, when I'm doing research and looking for articles, I differentiate between article types. Is it part of the symposium? Is this a student-written note, a comment, an essay, a response, or just an article? And you might consider some kind of an encoder that indicates the type of article that it is.
There is one. Isn't there one in the document metadata? Let's see here. Yeah, I'm sure there is a. Document type, which can be whatever you want it to be. One thing that may be useful is whether the document type, here we're really defining one structure, but we're saying this is document type. But one thing that I need to know is whether there is a symposium, there is a big structural difference between the different types.
I don't know that there is, apart from essays and then the vast group of articles that go by different names, and then the occasional poem. Yeah. Somebody writes by way of a law review article, but there's some pretty idiosyncratic variations. Few partially.
Yes.
Is TurboXML the best authoring tool you've used, in particularly the visualization of the conceptual schema?
Yes. So far, I like XML Writer for, well, just another validation tool that I use, but I like XML Writer for, I like XML Authority for this visualization and the actual construction of, that is, you can start from the beginning and you can create a DTD or a schema, and then you can, it helps you build your DTD. That's how I of course, borrowed from the core document DTD a lot, most of it. But this tool allows you to really build stuff. This ability to do the branching and like here you can define your content models as to what you want to put in it, and it creates it for you. Yes.
Do you know of a document conversion piece of software, or, for example, we all have files in Word and WordPerfect, and if we're going to use this effectively, retrospectively putting those files into XML is just a ton of stuff that's out there. Can you talk to the issue of document conversion?
No, because it's not structured. That's the problem with that. As you can do it manually, The way I did this code fixing, I didn't type the text. I just cut and paste. From I had my structure and then cut from where and then paste it there. Okay. I'm going to have a little tool that is based on this DTD that will tell the author start a paragraph group, start a subgroup, put a document title, and things like that. It's not quite the big thing, but to get people to start using it so that we can, so what problems we have.
Yeah, pretty good luck working from two different methods. One is to simply use whatever the author is putting in the word processing document, kind of proxy for or that will at least get you that execution, some citation, so on. Particularly if you run first into some rough format and post-process it with a piece of custom software that's a little smarter, but the problem is that you need editorial consistency in order to create any economies of scale of all format, and you usually don't get. If I had a bunch of already stuff to do, I think I'd try to get the marked up stuff from Christensen as the typeset goes in already and work with their typesetting stuff. It's probably the best proxy.
Because they've essentially done the structuring. It's just not XML. If you can get those codes, you can go back and retrofit.
No, most likely it's probably some weird ass line type thing that you start with and then you're going to have to look at. Those can be fairly nice. We go around this stuff small. But I don't think it's something that
Well, since it runs primarily as Word macros in the beginning, it does a good job of getting all the headers and all that sort of stuff. I'm assuming that it's not certain but what it doesn't do is it doesn't capture any metadata. Like it's easy enough to find out where a paragraph begins and ends, and thereby numbering the paragraph. And it's easy enough to grab a heading. But any of the other attributes stuff that you want to put in there, you're not going to have.
that's
Easily.
the other thing I would try to do is try to get
Yeah. I mean, I worked for a while on a DTD no way to retrofit. Even if there's something consistent, the best I can do is.
Send me an email if you would like to continue.
Yes.
All right, you're up.
This is, I'll post it, it will be on there.
Thank you, I think I understood that.
But you have, did you get my email? It should be.
I don't want to know what we do.
Right from the thing.
So you don't know it's annoying. Load word perfect. It's fine. So you don't have to step through the process.
When did you get in?
Someone countered it.
Yesterday?
Right.
You had your meeting already?
You didn't really get first. Separate meeting.
1:30 to 5:30. What are you doing now?
Or assumption. Go back tomorrow.
Every time I see him, I try
See
to find
Jack in the
the start dating over there. I cannot get it to, he's like, he keeps claiming that the rest people.
6 something?
Think about what's in the not fair. I think that's too long. The idea that they could write an article about filling in the blanks, they would be thrilled.
Well, they can fill in the blanks of the metadata, but when it comes to actually the paragraph, time frame.
So what if we had single paragraph, you know, like I'm thinking like the templates that were just, so you take this and you turn it into a template that says, your introduction, you should, now do that. Yeah. In the first.
And there's some no break between your session and my session. Would it be okay if I just make sure that this works first?
I'm going to use it.
Like this, you've got, and then you've got.
Right.
Well, then you're going to build generation.
First we generate legal writings.
It's true, but so much preferred in actual legal profession, actual outward practice. So much of the stuff is boiling. So much just like, so people don't have to think about it.
Power on, getting number.
Well, and at least you don't get the kind of things.
I don't know what this contraption exactly does.
Submitting a brief on behalf of John Jones.
His name is
John
This
Jones,
name is
right, yeah.